I met my girlfriend at a party. A mutual friend was throwing a Halloween party 6 years ago. She went and dressed up as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and I thought it was a brilliant costume, so we started talking about it. The two of us connected right away, and we ended up leaving the party together. We had an amazing night together, and from there I asked her out again. I thought we were perfect for each other. She was everything I wanted in a partner and more. We had been dating for about 2 years when I asked her to move in with me. Ever since, things have been better than ever. She was very career focused, but she was unfortunately laid off from her job at the beginning of the pandemic. Her company had to make a lot of cutbacks, and her department was eliminated entirely. She took it very hard, but I was there for her the entire time. I had a good job, so it wasn't impossible for me to take care of us both. Of course, there were some adjustments to be made, but we managed to get through them. We had several friends in common, though we both had our own friends outside of those. Neither of us really felt like we needed to be best friends with each other's friends, because we had our own lives outside of each other. With that being said, most of her friends did like me, and I got along well with them in return. But she just had one friend that I couldn't shake the feeling didn't care for me. Let's call her Claire. I had never done anything to Claire to make her dislike me, but there was just something off between us. My girlfriend would go out with her friends often, and whenever I heard that Claire was going along, I got a little nervous. I was faithful and honest with my girlfriend, but part of me worried that Claire might be putting something in her ear to affect our relationship. Maybe that was just my anxiety, though. When I asked my girlfriend about her, she told me that Claire didn't dislike me, but she thought I was different from the type of guys she usually went after. I knew that before my girlfriend was with me, she had dated a lot of very athletic and dominant type men. I wasn't really like that. I preferred to stay home with her and watch movies or television shows, and most of my time spent with friends was through gaming. I didn't think that would be a reason to dislike me, though. I let it roll off my shoulders, and I didn't worry about it. I was confident that my girlfriend loved me, so it didn't matter to me what one of her friends thought, especially considering that all of her other friends really liked me. Some time passed, and I hadn't even thought about it. However, my girlfriend was acting a lot differently. She'd always been very into her fitness, so her spending a lot of time at the gym wasn't unusual, but I started to notice that she spent a lot more time there than usual. She was going to the gym twice a day, and she was closely monitoring her caloric intake. She was completely perfect in my eyes, and she most definitely was not overweight in any way. Honestly, I was somewhat worried about it, because it seemed almost obsessive. She talked to me about the diet she was on, and how she wanted to transition to a raw vegan lifestyle, which I wasn't too happy about. Going vegan required a lot of changes and research that I couldn't commit to. It seems like all of these changes came out of nowhere, and I didn't understand why she was so adamant about them all of a sudden. I didn't think that these changes were because she was cheating on me. I thought that maybe, if anything, she might have seen a documentary that spoke to her or something. A few months after she told me she was making that change, I saw her at the cafe around the corner from my job during my lunch hour. She was there with another man. I knew all of her friends, and I didn't recognize him. He was tall and extremely muscular, and he was clearly interested in her. She was facing away from me, so I couldn't tell if she was reciprocating that, though I was nervous about why she was at the cafe with this man to begin with. When I left in the morning, I had just been told that she would be going to the gym and spending time at home. I walked over to them and said hello, waiting for my girlfriend to introduce us. I think she instantly recognized my suspicion, and she quickly told me that he was one of the trainers from the gym. She said that he was vegan, and they were talking about some recipes and changes that she planned to implement in the coming weeks. They asked me to join them, and I did. After sitting with them while they talked about nutrition for a while, I felt like my suspicions were eased. I mean, why would my girlfriend invite me to sit down with her and man she was cheating on me with? When I got home later that night, she explained what happened in more detail before I even asked. She said that they were just talking at the gym and decided to grab lunch to chat more, and that it was nothing at all. Honestly, I was kind of torn about that reaction. Was she telling me that because she wanted to assure me that nothing was really happening, or did she tell me that because there was something going on and she needed to get ahead of it? I decided it would be best to trust her, so I just told her it was okay, but to let me know before she has lunch with some random man again. We laughed it off, and she assured me that it wouldn't happen again. The weeks went by, and she started to withdraw from me. We still spend time together, though it was nothing like it was before. I only saw her for a couple of hours in the morning and later in the evening after she got back from the gym. At that point, both of us were too tired to talk, much less do anything else. We practically stopped having sex after a while. Anytime I would try to initiate anything, she would tell me that she was really sore from the gym or she was tired and wanted to get up early. I felt like I was just being dismissed by her, and I didn't like it. She actually came home one night before I got back from work, and we had dinner together. It was the first night in a while that we ate together, and I was happy about it. At least I was happy until she got a call halfway through dinner and left to answer it outside. At that point, I would have been foolish not to wonder if something was going on. I thought about the man from the cafe right away, and I felt like an idiot for brushing it off so easily. I couldn't help but think that I walked in on a date without even realizing it. Later that night, she was in the shower, and I took the opportunity to look for evidence that something was going on in her phone. The first thing that I did was call the recent number that had shown up during dinner. After a couple of rings, a man answered the phone. He said, "Couldn't wait any longer, then left. I didn't say anything in response, which prompted him to say my girlfriend's name, as if he was waiting for her to reply. I had really been hoping it was some toll collector or scam calls, so I didn't know what to say. I just stayed quiet, hoping he would hang up after a minute, thinking that it was just a butt dial. Thankfully, that's what happened. I looked through the messages, and I found a lot of evidence that they had been sleeping together almost every night for the past several weeks. It was the guy from the cafe, and they had been staying late at the gym to sleep with each other after it closed. One thing that really caught my eye about their messages was how the guy said that he was glad Claire introduced them. My blood was boiling when I read that. I always knew that Claire didn't like me, but I didn't think she would actively encourage my girlfriend to have an affair. I opened up their text messages, and I searched for the name of the guy, and I saw the conversation with my own eyes. Claire had texted my girlfriend about this cute guy who worked at the gym she went to. She told her that he was just my girlfriend's type. At first, my girlfriend told her that she was happy in her relationship. A couple of days later, Claire sent my girlfriend a picture of herself in the mirror at the gym with a man standing behind her with a large red circle drawn around him. She told her that was the guy she had been talking about. Then she said that she showed him a picture of her, and he was down to go out. My girlfriend told her that she didn't want to at first. The following day, my girlfriend asked her if she had a guest pass for her gym. Then they started talking about how cute the guy was. Claire had actively encouraged my girlfriend to cheat on me with this guy from the gym. I put the phone away and pretended like I didn't know anything about it for the next couple of days. I needed to find a way to get back at my girlfriend for humiliating me. Not only did she cheat on me, she cheated on me, and then I sat at the table with her and the man she was sleeping with. The only thing I could think to do was to get the guy fired from the gym. From there, I could break up with my girlfriend and kick her out of my apartment. She didn't have a job, and she had been relying on me for support, so I was going to take that away from her. The first time after I found out about the affair and my girlfriend texted me telling me she was going to stay at the gym later, I took that opportunity to make sure they got caught. From the research that I did on the gym, I found out that it was just a small family-owned business. The owner's information was on their website, So after they closed, and I knew that my girlfriend was still inside having sex with the guy, I called him. I told him that I had left my house keys inside the gym and I desperately needed them. He was super helpful, and he came back to let me in. When he opened the door, he saw that a lot of the lights were on when they shouldn't have been. He was cursing under his breath as he walked through the gym to properly close down. I heard yelling come from somewhere in the back, where I can only assume he walked in on his employee having sex with my girlfriend. Moments later, my girlfriend ran out of the back room with her shirt on backward and saw me. Shortly after that, the man came out carrying a camera and a tripod. Apparently, they had been filming all of their encounters. I just left, and my girlfriend chased behind me trying to explain what happened. I let her explain because I wanted to hear how ridiculous it sounded, and she tried to make it seem like I was the problem. Everything she said was things that I had no doubt Claire had put in her head. She said that I wasn't exciting and that I didn't know how to please her, but she never talked to me about any of that. I kicked her out of my apartment, and she went to stay with Claire. I found out later on through some mutual friends that she tried dating the guy from the gym for a while, but they ended up not working out. Neither of them had jobs after that point, and it put a lot of stress on their relationship. On top of that, they had been filming their time together, and they posted the videos online. Their faces were blurred out, but she had definitely posted them on the internet. Opie, I'm so sorry you had to go through something like this. It seems like you were really putting the effort into your relationship, and your girlfriend wasn't interested in doing the same. Claire seems like a terrible person who had no business sticking her nose in your relationship. It's such a shame that your girlfriend let her get in her head. The fact that your girlfriend was so willing to film herself having sex with a virtual stranger to post online without telling you is pretty telling. She just seems like a very selfish person, and anybody in a relationship should speak to their partner about things like that first. Blaming you for her affair is a classic cheater move, but I assure you none of this was your fault. If she was really unhappy, she could have come to you and discussed your sex life, and you could have worked on it together. I really hope you're able to move on from this. It sounds like your girlfriend wasn't a good match for you, and I wish you the best moving forward. I hope you find someone who will respect you. Now, let's move on to our next story. My wife and I recently celebrated our 5-year wedding anniversary. She and I have been together since our senior year of college. I had actually never met her until we were in the same thesis class. We sat near each other and I thought she was cute, so one day I struck up a conversation and asked her out. Our relationship quickly evolved, and we both knew that we had something that not a lot of people found. We ended up graduating and moving in together within a year. One thing that both of us really wanted out of life was a big family. We had talked a lot about wanting to have at least 3 children, probably more. The first step for us getting started with that was to get ahead financially so we can provide for them. We got married and worked our butts off to be able to put a significant amount of money into savings to start a family. We put a down payment on a house, bought the furniture that we needed, and we started trying for a family. Everything in our life was going exactly how we wanted it to. We were thrilled to be happily starting such an incredible journey together. We had been trying for a baby for about 6 months, and we had no luck. At the time, we weren't in a huge rush for it, so we were trying not to stress out and just enjoy the time we spent trying. After a year of trying with no success, we decided that we needed to see a fertility specialist to figure out what the issue was and how to move on from it. When I went into my physical, I was quickly told by the doctor that it was likely my fault that we couldn't get pregnant. When I was a teenager, I had a brain tumor. My family did everything in their power to help me, and part of that included radiation therapy. At the time, I don't think my parents or myself were very concerned with my reproductive health. We very much wanted to make sure the tumor was gone, so we did what we had to. Now, As an adult, I'm learning that I will never be able to father my children because of it. When I left my physical, I had to break that news to my wife, and she took it very hard. We both wanted a family more than anything, and I wasn't going to be able to give that to her. Though, we still had options, and I was trying to excite her about those. After I told her about that, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was mad at me. I didn't want to believe that was the case because it was just as heartbreaking for me as it was for her to find out. I could tell that she viewed me differently than she did before. I did everything in my power to try and bring things back to normal between us. I loved her more than anything in the world, and I didn't want to lose her over this. We had options, and we could work through them to still be happy. Not long before we started trying for a baby, we bought our own house. It was a bit of a fixer-upper, so we were working on it while living in it. There were only a few things that really needed to be taken care of. One of the biggest issues with the house was how the plumbing was very iffy. I could do some things like repair drywall and install cabinets, but we needed to hire a certified plumber to look at the house. My wife took care of that while I focused on other aspects of renovating the house. She hired the plumber and dealt with him most of the time. She told me one evening that the plumber was going to be coming over the next day. She had already met with him several times before, but I hadn't met him yet. I had already planned to take the day off work because I was expecting a large delivery that I needed to bring in. When I met him, it was difficult not to feel a little jealous. He was a good-looking guy. On top of that, he seemed to be a little chummy with my wife. I started talking to him about the work he'd been doing, and I quickly brushed off my insecurities and told myself that it was just professional between them. Things started to get back to normal between my wife and me. We were spending more time together, and we had even started having sex again. It was much less frequent than it was when we were actively trying to have a child, but I was still happy to be having in general. One night she and I were just sitting on the couch and watching a couple of movies when she started off into the bathroom and threw up. Neither of us thought it was possible for her to be pregnant, so we assumed she had food poisoning, but it kept happening. She went to the doctor, and they were able to confirm that she was pregnant. I didn't understand how it happened. I have been told that I wasn't able to have children, yet my wife was pregnant. It was naive for me to think this, but I thought it was a miracle. My wife wasn't as happy as I thought she would be. I assumed she would be over the moon when she got the news, but she seemed almost distressed by it. She was withdrawing from me again, and I could tell that there was something seriously wrong with her. I was worried that she wasn't feeling all right because of the pregnancy, and I was asking her all the time if there was anything I could do. She started to make very secretive phone calls and hide her phone from me when she wasn't using it. I started to think that something serious was going on. I didn't want to look into it because I was afraid I was going to get hurt, but I knew that I had to. I was able to get a quick look at her phone while she had taken a nap one afternoon, and I found information that completely shattered my heart. Of course, it was the plumber. All the time that he had been home with her, while I was at work, they were sleeping together. It had been happening since my wife found out that I couldn't father a child. In one of the messages, just hours after we found out that she was pregnant, she messaged him and told him that she was pretty sure it was his. I felt like the world had completely fallen out from under my feet. I thought having a child would be impossible for me, and I was so happy when I thought it was happening. I was just a fool to believe that it was mine. The worst part about it was that the plumber didn't really want to be a part of anything. He suggested just telling me that it was mine. My wife agreed that would be the best option. I couldn't deal with my wife after learning about that. If she was going to have another man's baby and then pretend like it was mine, she wasn't the woman that I knew. I was going to divorce her, but I didn't know what to do because she was pregnant. It felt wrong to leave her while she was carrying a child, and I didn't want to leave her a single mother. My wife caught me while I was looking through her phone. She bolted up and grabbed it from my hands, and I just stared at her. She knew right away by the look in my eyes what I had found. She tried to explain herself by saying that she was in a very vulnerable state and he was there. She thought less of me for a while because I couldn't give her a child. I told her that no matter what, we were over. There was still a very slim chance the child was mine, so I wanted to have a DNA test done. If it was mine, we would deal with joint custody and figure that out. If it wasn't mine, I was out of her life completely. She reached out to the plumber and told him about it, and he agreed to give us the mouth swab that we needed to perform the test. When my wife was 8 weeks pregnant, we went in to have it done officially. The results came back that the plumber was the father. She told him, and he was less than ecstatic. It felt truly awful to leave her, but I didn't really have a choice. It wasn't my child, and I couldn't stand being around my wife after she said what she did. So, I divorced her, and because of her affair, I didn't have to give her anything. After the baby was born, I tried to stay out of my wife's life. She had moved back in with her parents so they could help her with child care while she worked. Apparently, the plumber had decided he didn't want anything to do with either of them and chose not to pay child support like he was supposed to. I didn't want anything to do with my wife. When I heard about that, I was frustrated. I reported him to the authorities for failure to pay child support, and he was forced to pay it with back pay or face jail time. I have a lot of things to deal with personally now. It's hard for me to trust people enough to want to get involved with another woman. On top of that, I have to worry about never being able to start my own family. I think the best thing for me at the moment is just to take some time to be single and figure out what it is that I want out of life. Opie, I'm so sorry you had to go through all of this. It's really sad how she turned her back on you after you were both given bad news about your chances to conceive. There are plenty of options for couples who can't have children of their own, and it seemed like your ex-wife didn't really want to pursue any of those. It isn't fair for her to put any of the blame on you for what happened. When you were younger and had to go through radiation therapy for your own health, this was a side effect of that. If you hadn't done that, then you might not even be here today. So it was the right thing, and it's no one's fault that you can't have children. She was very quick to cheat on you with the plumber after finding out the news. It was very selfish of her to use the pain you both felt as a catalyst to betray your marriage. I know it's hard to realize when you love someone, but you're better off without a person like that in your life. It's a good thing that you're thinking about taking time to be single, because that might be the right thing for you to heal from this. I wish you the best of luck moving forward, and I hope you're able to open your heart up again to try and trust people. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. 34 male, and my wife, 30 female, met at a wedding for a mutual friend. She was one of the bridesmaids, and I couldn't take my eyes off of her throughout the ceremony. During the reception, I asked her to dance, and we connected. We exchanged information and scheduled our first date with each other for the following weekend. The time we got to spend together was amazing, and I'm confident in saying that I fell in love with her right then. We dated for a year and a half before we got married. It was somewhat of a whirlwind romance, and we didn't want to wait much longer. Some of our family and friends thought that it might have been a little too soon, but they knew how passionate we felt about each other. When we first started dating, I had an amazing job. I made twice what my wife made every year with a little more to spare. We had some long conversations after we were married, and we decided it would be best for her to quit her job. She had wanted to focus on building a business of her own anyway, so we thought it would be good for her to do that while I continued working. During the early years of our marriage, we had a lot of conversations about starting a family. It was something that I wanted to do down the line, but I wanted to spend a few years with just my wife. I wanted to travel and explore the world in my free time, and having a child was going to make that difficult. I was under the assumption that she had an IUD and things were being taken care of on her end to avoid pregnancy, so I was very surprised when she was waiting for me at home one evening to tell me that she was pregnant. I didn't know how it happened, and she explained to me that it's possible that an IUD isn't 100% effective. I didn't know how any of that worked at the time, so I didn't question it. It took me by surprise, and my reaction wasn't exactly what my wife was hoping for, so she was hurt that I wasn't immediately excited about it all. I assured her that I was excited about having the baby, but it was just a lot sooner than I thought it would be. Everything with the pregnancy went well, and my wife gave birth to a very healthy baby girl, and our lives have been completely different ever since. I love my daughter more than anything in the world, and I would burn down an entire city for her if I needed to. That being said, my wife had a funny way of reminding me how I reacted when I found out about the pregnancy. After our daughter was born, my wife put her business on the back burner to take care of her. I understood doing that for a little while, but I had personally invested a lot of money in the business she wanted to start. I was encouraging her to get back at it because I didn't want to lose all the money that I put into it. She was frustrated with me for suggesting that. She saw herself as a full-time mother, and the business was no longer a concern of hers. I was able to sway her to focus on it while she took care of our daughter. Don't get me wrong, I understood where she was coming from, but she had been very adamant about me sinking thousands of dollars into her business before she got pregnant. Wasting all of that was not an option. For the first 3 years of our daughter's life, everything was going well with us. My wife was running her business, and it wasn't the most successful, but she was earning a modest income from it. Everything had been going very well with my job, and we were even thinking about buying a vacation house. Everything completely changed when I was unexpectedly laid off from my job. The company was going bankrupt, and they were making massive cuts. We had a decent amount in savings, and I was able to liquidate some other assets so we could live comfortably for a while I looked for another job. But there was a time when we were relying on my wife's business to make money. She didn't like that at all. She was angry with me for getting laid off. I could tell that she thought I wasn't working hard enough or giving enough to the job, and that made me the reason we were going through the troubles we were. She seemed to care less about me when I wasn't bringing in all of the money for the household. While I was unemployed and looking for a new job, I started to notice some changes with my wife. I was home all of the time, and she couldn't seem to get away from me fast enough. It seemed like the idea of sleeping with me made her angry, and she was dressing up a lot more than she normally did just to run errands like going to the grocery store. I thought she was acting strangely, but I figured it was just the stress of adjusting to everything we had gone through. One day, she told me that she was invited to grab drinks with one of her girlfriends and was going. I said goodbye to her that evening, and she came home drunk around midnight. I asked her about the time she had, but she wasn't interested in sharing too much. She was drunk and laughing, telling me it was a secret. I thought she was just being silly and would tell me the next day. When I asked her over breakfast, she said she hardly remembered. I didn't remember her being blackout drunk, so I thought that was odd. In hindsight, it was an excuse to avoid talking about it. I started to worry that something might be going on when she was going out more often with her friends. I assumed she was doing it to get away from the stress of things at home with me there. I never thought she'd be cheating. One night while she was out, I was putting our daughter to bed, and I felt that she had a slight fever. I knew the basics about what to do, but I didn't know where any child Motrin or anything like that was. So, I called my wife to see if she could help me. I called her several times and texted her, and she never answered. I understood that she was out with her friends and might not have been looking at her phone, but it seemed irresponsible. If there was an emergency or anything like that, I expected her to answer the phone. She came back later that night and immediately went to check on our daughter because she felt bad for not being there. She was a little bit drunk, but I tried to have a conversation with her about what was going on anyway. I aired all of my concerns about her not answering her phone and going out with her friends more often. She told me that it was unfair that I wanted her to just stay home and take care of the kid. She was framing it as me forcing an exclusively domestic lifestyle on her when I wasn't holding up my end of the bargain. We got into a huge argument about all of that, and she basically told me that she was upset that I lost my job. Neither of us spoke to the other for a couple of days as we tried to get over what was said during the fight. During those days, she was getting a lot of phone calls that she would take away from me. I was curious about them, so I stood on the other end of a door and eavesdropped. She was whispering on the phone and explained to someone that she couldn't leave because her daughter was sick, but she told them that she missed them and couldn't wait to see them again in a few days. That wasn't how she spoke to her friends. It wasn't a platonic phone call at all. I pretended like I didn't hear what happened, and I went through her phone later that night. I saw that she had a text message exchange with a guy that she went to college with. He always had a crush on her, but she didn't reciprocate it. The guy was a highly sought-after lawyer in our area and married. That didn't seem to matter to either of them because they were having an affair from what I saw in the messages. They were sending each other nude pictures and explicit messages and scheduling times to be together. I noticed from the meeting times they set that they were all during the nights when my wife was supposedly out with her friends. The interesting part of their messages was how they all started. Days after I lost my job, she sent him a message asking if he knew of a good divorce attorney. He asked if everything was all right with us and wanted to help her if he could. She told him that our marriage wasn't working out and she wanted to get out before things got messy. I had no idea what she meant by that. Up until I lost my job, everything had been going great with us. I had never heard her. I hardly even raised my voice at her, so saying she was worried things would get messy was strange. From there, they started talking about their past and that she always had a thing for him. Whenever she would talk to me about him, she mentioned how pathetic his crush on her was. She made it seem like she thought she was so much better than him and wouldn't even consider being with him. Now she's telling him that she's always had a thing for him. I felt like a fool for believing what she told me. The relationship had been diminishing before my eyes, and I was too eager to ignore the signs. Seeing how her affair started after I lost my job put a lot of things in perspective for me. When we met, she was working and had a decent job, so I never assumed that she could have been with me for the money and stability that I offered. But in hindsight, she was very quick to leave her job and convince me she was going to run a business that she practically abandoned. I gathered as much evidence off of her phone as I could, and I sent it all to myself so I could give it to my divorce attorney. If she thought for 1 second she was going to be divorcing me and taking half of my assets, she had another thing coming. On top of divorcing her, I wanted to get back at her for what she did. It was clear to me that she had been using me throughout the entirety of our marriage, and I was angry. I took a little while to think about what I wanted to do, and I came up with an idea. I called the lawyer that she was having an affair with, and I had a conversation with him about wanting to sue my former employer for wrongful termination. I made it seem like there was going to be a big case that he was going to be unable to refuse. He and I were somewhat acquaintances, so I told him to bring his wife over to our house, and we would have lunch together, all four of us. He tried to get out of it, but I insisted. Before we had our lunch meeting, I had a conversation with my wife about him coming over. I joked around with her about what she said about the lawyer in the past. She started talking about how he was in college and the weird things he was doing all while I was recording her. She said she thought he was pathetic and didn't understand how he landed someone like his wife. It was all just very mean. The day of our lunch meeting finally came, and we all sat around on my back patio and got to talking. I casually mentioned that my wife mentioned she went to school with the lawyer. They both started talking about it fondly and reminiscing. I corrected my wife and told her that wasn't what she told me earlier. I pulled out my phone and played a recording of her calling him pathetic and an embarrassing loser. The lawyer was obviously very offended by it. Then I told him that I bet he wished he knew how she really felt before they had an affair. That caught everybody off guard, and both of them tried to deny it. I told them there was no point in denying it, and I knew everything. I also told them that I was in contact with a divorce attorney and I would be making sure my wife didn't get a thing from me. The lawyer and his wife got into an argument, and she ended up leaving by herself. My wife didn't think about coming to me to clarify what was happening. Instead, she went to the lawyer and tried to explain why she said the things that she did. He clearly didn't believe her either. He must have had some inkling of how she felt at the time, and hearing her say it finally confirmed it. I butted my head in, and I explained to him that she was only really with me for the money. So when I lost my job, she was probably jumping over to him so she wouldn't have to work for anything. Part of me felt bad for him because I knew that she was manipulating him, but he knowingly slept with a married woman, so he deserved whatever was going to happen to him after. I kicked my wife out of the house that night, and she begged me not to because she said she didn't have anywhere else to go. She fought very hard to get a portion of my assets. It was very clear that she had one thing in mind during all of it, and that was money. In the end, she didn't get anything from me. Not long after our divorce, I actually found an incredible job as well. If she had just stuck it out for a few months, none of that would have happened and she would have been more comfortable than she ever was. Instead, she had to be selfish and greedy and ended up losing everything in the end. Opie, from what you described, it definitely seems like your wife was with you for the money. It's such a shame that it would have to be that way. It seems like you worked really hard to give your family a certain level of comfort, and she took full advantage of that. I agree. It does seem like she was manipulating the lawyer to be on her side with things. Her telling him that she always had a crush on him when she knew how he felt about her was wrong. She had one thing in mind when she did that, and it was breaking up a family so she could step in and be with someone who could provide her a certain lifestyle. Her selfish actions broke up two families, and she really should be ashamed of herself. I think karma really got her in the end when she left with nothing at all. She didn't get anything from you, and from the way it sounds, the lawyer didn't want anything to do with her after he heard the truth. Now, for our next story. My wife and I both met when we were in our mid-20s at a club. I was there with my best friend, let's call him David, and I saw her from across the room. She was by far the best-looking woman in the building, and I wanted to shoot my shot with her. There were so many other men trying to get with her, but somehow I was the one she chose to be with. Every day since then, she had chosen to be with me, and I was very grateful for that up until recently. We had been married for 8 years, and everything was going well. We put off having children so we could focus on our careers, and we were finally in a place where we could try. Before we started trying to have our first kid, my wife and I wanted to have one last vacation on our own to sort of send off our life before kids. We invited David and his wife, let's call her Kelly, along with us. All four of us were looking forward to the trip for a while. We were going to the Caribbean and really looking forward to the wonderful views and all the activities we had planned. Leading up to the trip, my wife was kind of nervous about it. I didn't fully understand why she had flown on planes countless times before. I tried to comfort her as much as I could and tell her that the trip was going to be fine, but it didn't really seem to work much. The time came for all four of us to leave, and we got there without a hitch and settled into our hotel rooms. We actually had adjoining rooms, which we all got a kick out of first. We made sure to lock our end so our friends didn't walk into our room uninvited. Part of me thought that this trip was going to be almost like a second honeymoon for my wife and me. I was expecting it to be a little more passionate and intimate than it turned out to be. She wasn't really too eager about having sex with me the first couple of nights we were there. She told me that she was jet-lagged and just not feeling like herself, so I didn't pressure her into anything. All of us had managed to fully take the time off work for the vacation with the exception of one meeting that I had during the middle of it. It was something that I could hop on a Zoom call for a couple of hours and be done with. On the day of my meeting, we spent the morning at the breakfast buffet, then I left to have my meeting. In the middle of it, I could hear shuffling around in the room next door. I assumed someone just went in to grab something, but I didn't think too much about it. When it was over, I went to the beach to meet up with everyone. Kelly wasn't there when I arrived. It was just my wife and David. They were laughing about something, and I asked him what was so funny, but they just told me that it was nothing. They mentioned that Kelly went up to the room to get some rest because she had a headache. David was my best friend, and I trusted my wife, so I never suspected anything was amiss. They were friendlier than they normally were with each other while we were on the beach, but I just thought they might have had a few too many drinks already. All of us went to dinner later that day, and I thought I noticed David touching my wife. I saw it out of the corner of my eye. It looked like he patted her on the butt while they were walking by each other. I have been drinking, so part of me kind of assumed that I might have mistaken something that happened. I didn't make a big deal out of it. We went through the rest of dinner, and I was a little bit on edge about what I saw, so I wasn't as jovial as I normally was. My wife and David kept looking at each other and smiling. It felt silly, but I was starting to worry that my wife and David were up to something. We got back to our hotel room, and I asked my wife about it when we were alone. I was drunk by that point, and my wife was as well. She told me nothing was happening. I explained the butt pat that I thought I saw, and she told me that it didn't happen. I saw what I did, but I didn't want to believe it. I convinced myself that I was drunk and paranoid, and it would be best if I just went to sleep. I woke up in the middle of the night, and my wife wasn't there. I looked around for her, and I didn't see her anywhere. I got up and started looking for her and saw that the door to the adjoining room was open just a crack. I knew for a fact we kept it locked, so it had to have been deliberately opened by my wife. I peeked inside David and Kelly's room and saw that Kelly was asleep in the bed and David was missing. The memories of the night before had come back to me, and I started to put the pieces together, and I imagined that David and my wife were off somewhere together. Then I noticed the light to the large walk-in closet was on. I listened carefully for a moment, and I could hear very soft, stifled moans alongside some quiet shuffling coming from inside of the closet. I didn't want to open the door because I already had a pretty good sense of what I was going to see, but I knew that I needed to. I tipped it over as quietly as I could and stood in front of the door for a second before yanking it open. I saw exactly what I had anticipated, but that didn't make it hurt any less. My wife and David were in the middle of having sex with each other. When I opened the door and my wife saw me, she screamed. Kelly jolted awake in bed and yelled at me about being in her room, but then she realized what was really happening. Kelly stormed over to the closet and immediately started screaming at David about what he was doing. She mentioned how she was right not to have wanted to come on the trip with my wife and told him that they were done. I was really confused about what she was saying because they didn't seem hesitant about joining us on the trip at all. I asked for clarification, and Kelly just looked at David and my wife, waiting for them to elaborate. My wife finally spoke up, and she confessed to me that she and David had slept together once before back home. David told Kelly about it because he felt bad, and Kelly was able to forgive him as long as it didn't happen again. They both said that it was a mistake and it just happened and they regretted it. David and Kelly both promised not to tell me about what happened because they didn't know how I was going to react. So Kelly didn't want to go on vacation with the woman that slept with her husband. I could completely understand that. What I couldn't understand was why everybody thought it was okay to leave me in the dark about it. I was the only one who didn't know, and I felt foolish for trusting David and my wife. I thought they made me look like an idiot. I went back to my room and my wife tried to explain it to me, telling me that it really meant nothing and that it was just sex. I didn't understand how that was justifying anything she said. Sleeping with somebody with no emotional connection didn't make it any better. She still cheated on me, and that was what I cared about. David came into the room and tried to explain his side of everything to me, and I ended up just punching him in the face. I do regret that because it wasn't exactly the most mature way to handle the situation, but I was in the heat of the moment, and it felt right at the time. I ended up leaving the vacation the following morning and leaving everybody else behind. I went home to begin the divorce proceedings before my wife returned. I didn't want anything to do with her, and I didn't want anything to do with David or Kelly. Kelly came back shortly after I did, and she stopped by my house to apologize for keeping the secret. Apparently, my wife had promised her that she was going to tell me, and Kelly thought that she did. Otherwise, she wouldn't have ever kept silent about it. I believed what she said. She had no reason to come over and lie to my face about it. My wife and David didn't come back home for an additional 3 days. I was already upset about the cheating, but the fact that they stayed behind on the vacation for an additional 3 days after everything happened was infuriating. I can only imagine the types of things they were doing while there for 3 days alone. I talked to Kelly after they came home and asked her what she was going to do. She told me that she had forgiven him once for cheating on her and wasn't able to do it again. She planned on leaving him and moving out of their house. I ended up divorcing my wife, and Kelly divorced David. My wife and David tried to date each other for a while after everything happened, and from what I understand, it ended very badly. David cheated on my wife with a woman from his work and ruined their relationship. I just felt like that was karma coming back to get her in the end, though. I am now happy away from both of them. I do check in with Kelly from time to time, but I try to stay away from her because it just reminds me of the times I had with David and my wife. But I'm now dating a wonderful girl, and I realize that I'm going to have a lot of issues in my future relationships, but I'm trying to let myself be vulnerable and open again. Opie, being cheated on is already terrible, and it's made so much worse when the affair partner is a close friend. You trusted David and your wife, and they betrayed your trust. It's such a shame that they would throw away their marriages for a seemingly meaningless fling they were having with each other. The fact that they had already slept together and felt bad enough about it to tell Kelly, then slept together again while Kelly was in the same room as them, is insane. There was a thin door between David and his sleeping wife, and he and your wife didn't care about that. That's just so disrespectful. I'm glad that you divorced your wife and you're no longer friends with David. I can understand how being friends with Kelly is something that reminds you of the times you had with both of them. They were people that you loved and trusted, and they turned their backs on you, and remembering the good times is probably as painful as the bad times. It's good that you're dating again and being open about the issues that you might face in the future. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to today's stories. If you enjoyed listening, please feel free to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Also, comment below with your thoughts on what happened. If there is a story you would like to share with me about your own situation or someone else's, then please do not hesitate to contact me. Welcome to Reddit Relationships. Now, let's get into this Reddit video. This story is called, I Literally Walked In on My Wife, Cheating on Me with Her Ex, Together almost 7 years, married for just over 1. She dated him ages 18 to 22, then someone else for a couple of years, then me 2012. Until now, we are both 31. He's 40-ish, long story, TLDR at the bottom. We do everything together, including running a successful small business. Our friend group makes fun of how perfect our falling in love story is. And other than this problem, it has been a very happy, fun, successful relationship. Over the years, she saw him occasionally, birthdays, holidays, maybe once every couple months, always for an hour or two, dinner or coffee. I never, not once, saw him. He is married and has a child and always hid from his wife. He was hanging out with my wife. Note, he cheated on my wife several times while they were dating. So, I have always been baffled why she wanted to keep in contact with him. He also was in a serious accident where she rehabilitated him, feeding him in bed for months. And then he cheated on her again. As soon as he was back on his feet, he also made her clean his entire house all the time and inspected her work. She doesn't have many friends, so she always said it was nice to meet up with an old friend who shares history, whatever. I didn't think much of it at first, and I trusted her, even though I disagreed with her. So, one day, a couple of years in, I see her phone light up from the coffee table. He texted her, I glance, and it is a super sexual kind of joke. I freak out inside. I talk to her about it and say, it is very inappropriate, yada, yada. She says she'll talk to him, and it will never happen again. I write it off as him being a dirtbag. Few months later, it happens again. Now, I am freaking out. So, I start reading through her texts while she's asleep, because as embarrassing and gross as it is, I need to know. Lots of sexual jokes are general. Remember that time. Also texts being critical of me. I wake her up screaming, saying she can never see him again. If this continues, she doesn't see him for several months. Somehow over the next year or so, she talks me into being okay with it. Again, his cat dies. We need real estate advice. He's in that line of work. I don't know, whatever. I say, okay, because it's been like a year. This is around year 4 or 5. It seems fine and normal for a while, but I keep reading the texts. I find some more sleazy jokes. I snap and say, for real, this is the last time. Now, a year later, somehow, once again, I come around to allowing them to hang out. But I am not happy about it. And I must add, I have been vehemently not happy about it and telling her so, and it is our sole problem. And it always comes up how much I hate him, but I love her. So I let her, and it's only every couple months or so, whatever. Anyway, fast forward to the last couple months. I notice they are talking way more often, lots of phone calls and texts. We have each other's locations because we are married, and she insisted. I never look, but now I start to look. I check a few weeks ago. She's at an address I don't recognize, call her to see what's up. She sounds odd, says she is at a friend's house. I know where this person stays, and it is not the location she is currently at. So, I say hello to X's name for me, assuming that's what she is doing. She rushes home. She is so scared that she was caught hanging out with him. And in a lie, she is so scared. She starts puking and doesn't sleep all night. I am mad as hell, but I forgive her. We are fine for a couple of weeks. She is still texting with him lots. We work a lot all week together and have fun. He is around in her life enough over the years that I can't help thinking of him often and comparing myself to him. He is super rich. I'm definitely not. Thoughts of them pop in my mind, of them being together. Even while we are being intimate, I tell my mind to stop, but it keeps happening. I am losing trust. After dropping her off at home, after work, I go back to do more work mentioning I'll be out until 2 a.m. or so. I get tired and come home early thinking we could just watch Netflix. She isn't home. Even though I just spoke with her, I check her location and she is nearby his house. The location updates. She is on her way home. I see the dot stop at the top of the street. I wait 10 or so minutes. I walk up our street, expecting to just surprise them. Meet him for the first time. Introduce myself very awkwardly, and then ask her why she is lying about seeing him as I walk closer. I don't see two silhouettes. I get closer and find them in his car, but she's on his lap, kissing him, arms wrapped around him. I pause for a few seconds in shock. I open his door, fast. I scream, punch him in the face. He looks scared and confused. I throw my ring onto his dash and scream some sort of speech. Storm away back home. Grab clothes and drive 2 hours north to stay at my dad's. I think of all the times they must have been together. How could it be possible that the only time I have ever seen his face, they are kissing, out of the dozens and dozens of times I have let them get together? It can't just be the one time, right? I come back to town. We talk, I yell and scream and break stuff, smash a chair, asking for the truth. She says she also kissed him when his cat died, for years ago. But those were the only 2 times, and they were because she was trying to make him happy. My trust is shattered. I don't believe those could be the only 2 times, after all the sexual joking texts, and I mean, we are adults who only just makes out for a bit. Even if that is the truth, I have told her for years that he is trying to be more than a friend. She always just brushed it off and continues to convince me that they are just friends and it's no big deal. Even though she knew I really didn't want her to see him, even all of her friends and family have continuously scolded her for seeing him after what he did to her, considering all that, and the fact that she cheated on me 4 years ago, when his cat died. Like, how dare she? Anyway, I've read online that couples counseling and one-on-one counseling is the only way to get out of this alive. But to be honest, I'm not feeling very hopeful. This was a building problem over years, my only problem with her, and it exploded. I am not a violent person. I have been in one fight my entire life, in grade 7. And now, I have punched a man in the face. I just don't know if I believe her. She deleted him off everything and promised she will never see him again. But who knows how long that will last. I guess she just never got over him and just lied to herself thinking it was just a friendship and would do anything to get that attention from him. Anyway, anybody else gone through this? What do I do? I hate that I'm posting this. I just don't want our friends to know. Thanks. TLDR, happily together for almost 7 years. She sees her ex, first love, every so often throughout the years. I find suspicious texts over the years. We fight about it. She continually convinces me it's no biggie. Time goes by, same problem, but infrequent, happy life. We get married, lots of love. A few days ago, I walk up our street and find him in his car. She's on his lap, kissing him. I open his door, fast. I scream. I punch him in the face. He looks scared and confused. My first violent episode since 7th grade. I throw my ring onto his dash, yell some sort of speech, and storm away and drive 2 hours north to stay at my dad's. We try talking or maybe getting therapy. Now, what do I do? This story is called, Am I the Asshole for Leaving My Wife Before Christmas? My wife and I have been together just over 5 years total, 3 dating, 2 married, with our second wedding anniversary coming up in December. She's prepping the house for the holidays and is in an overall happy mood. She also has a trip to her grandparents this weekend. She usually visits them once a year around this time. This year will be a bit different as I plan to pack my things and leave her while she's away this weekend. A little backstory. In March of this year, I discovered my wife was having an affair with a co-worker about 20 years her senior. Basically, they were chatting using a shared Apple account. I don't want to get into too many details. The gist of it is, is unhappy with our marriage, developed feelings for her co-worker. This spiraled into her hating me for about 6 months while she explored dating her co-worker. This involved a few late nights at work as they trained for a 5K run together, did some swimming dates, and even got tattoos at one point. I, on the other hand, spent those months trying to win her back by showing her how good a husband I was, cooking, cleaning, finishing some house projects. When nothing changed, I accused her of having an affair, which she flatly denied. So, I provided evidence of the affair, text messages and phone calls, but she still denied it. They were just friends. In May, I suggested marriage counseling, and we had a few sessions leading into June. In counseling, she admitted to the affair, which was a huge relief for me and seemed to be coming around to wanting to work on our marriage. With the help of our counselor, I gave her an ultimatum. She could continue the affair and I would leave her, or she could end the affair immediately and we could move forward and work on our marriage. She broke down in tears and said she wanted us to work on our marriage and that she would break up with the coworker the next day at work. The following day, I asked her about how her coworker took the breakup, and she said he took it well. Life went well for about a month until I caught the pair texting about meeting up in another city where her parents reside. I didn't lead on that. And later that day, she mentioned she was going on a trip over the weekend to visit her parents. I didn't stop her, but called her about 10 minutes into her date and called her out. She called me a liar and hung up the phone. When she was back from her trip, she apologized profusely, told me she broke it off with her coworker and to show that she meant it, promptly quit her job. We went to another marriage counselor in August and are still seeing him every few weeks. Now for me, our marriage was done after she lied about the ultimatum and have been leading her on since July. I would have left earlier, but we recently bought a home last year and the breakage costs would put us both in debt if we sold, so I've stayed. But talk with our broker about potentially selling. We will still owe a few grand, but would survive. So, am I the asshole for leaving my wife before Christmas and our second-year anniversary? TLDR, a year into our marriage, my wife has an affair, gave her a second chance, but affair continues. Plan to leave her this weekend. Edit. I've already decided to leave. Moving truck and accommodations are set up for the weekend. However, am I the asshole for leaving when she has put a ton of work into our relationship since ending the affair in July? She's more open about communicating. She planned a vacation for us in October that went well. She's quit her lucrative teaching job and is now subbing, working retail to make ends meet. To be fair for her, she's made a lot of improvements and honestly feels like a renewed person. I just have no wind left in my sails and can never fully trust her again. Edit 2. Thank you for the feedback so far. A bit of clarification in July, after I called her out for continuing to see her coworker. This was my emotional limit, and I was packing my bags before she got home that weekend. She talked me down and offered another round of marriage counseling. She booked the session for August and then promptly quit her job. So the temptation was gone. As far as I can tell, they no longer see each other. Edit 3. Glad to hear opinions on both sides of the asshole fence. Leaving in July or sooner was always an option, but would leave us both in financial ruin as we spent our savings on the down payment of the home. Cost of breaking a mortgage early are absurd. The extra time also allowed us to finish some renovations, mainly building the deck and landscaping. This should allow us to sell the place for more than we purchased it for, to alleviate some of the selling costs. I don't hate my wife, or I'm looking to make her suffer. Her dad is traveling with her to their grandparents and is aware of the situation. When she finds out, she'll have a ton of support to help her through the holidays. Final edit. Thank you to everyone who commented. I'm a man of my word, which is why I'm sticking to my ultimatum, not interested in finding out a few years down the road that I'm being cheated on again, or worrying why my wife is working late or if my kids are really mine. No kids at the moment, but we were trying after we bought the house. But it's pretty heartbreaking to leave. I can see why some folks stay in abusive relationships. Fear of the unknown. Take care, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to watch and listen to this Reddit